Welcome everyone to part one of a webinar series that's going to be hosted by the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about the new Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Education Initiative that kicks off in the 2021 school year. This webinar series is part one of 4 that will be released in the fall of 2020. In this webinar, this short introductory series, we are going to be talking about the initiative itself, as well as the guidance document that was released by DESE, that was put together by a work group of experts in the field of child sexual abuse education. We're going to go over the requirements of the law. The issue of the importance of teaching child sexual abuse prevention education in our schools, what is included in the document, and the different pieces of that document that we will go into further detail in parts 2 through 4 of this webinar series. So I think it's very important for those of you who are watching this series to actually see what is included in Missouri law and why this initiative and what this document was created to address to meet the requirements of Missouri law. So in 2019, the Missouri legislature passed a requirement to provide child sexual abuse education in Missouri schools. The law that was required and the language that you're seeing on your screen is very reflective of language that has been passed in, or laws that have been passed in about 30 states. This is a very common, it's often called Aaron's Law in other states. In Missouri, our language is very straightforward. You can see that beginning in school year 2021, each school shall provide trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate sexual abuse training to students in, at minimum, grades 6 and up. The law is not overly prescriptive about what it requires. That there's essentially 4 components that are required within this trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate education. Instructions providing students with the knowledge to recognize sexual abuse, report an incident of child sexual abuse, actions that a student can take to obtain assistance and intervention, and then available resources for students affected by sexual abuse. So with that in mind, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education pulled a group of content experts together to develop guidance and training materials that were provided to all school districts and to help implement these laws and provide some guidance. Missouri, provides a lot of flexibility around local control about how these types of requirements are implemented. This is just meant to provide some resources and information for schools to take and then utilize within their own planning. So let's give some background. Why should child sexual abuse prevention training be in schools? Children who are victims of child sexual abuse are at risk from suffering long-term consequences. It impacts their academic performance. Research shows lower grade point averages, higher school dropout rates, school absences, increased suspensions and expulsion. We know that trauma affects brain development, which can have severe consequences when it comes to school readiness, academic achievement, and behavior. These academic and behavioral risks can be diminished by comprehensive sexual abuse prevention education. When you're going through and you're looking at and using this webinar series and going through this document, it's important to know that these children or these programs are not designed to put children in charge of their own safety. That is the role of adults. And so throughout this guidance and throughout this series, you'll notice that we do place a lot of responsibility on the adults delivering this education and those that are working with the kids. And we encourage schools when they're pursuing and implementing the requirements of this law to provide a comprehensive training to those adults that will be delivering this education. And there are resources in the document to help with that. Because we know that schools are in a unique position to help young people shape positive, healthy attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to work to prevent child sexual abuse. So the law required for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to develop guidance and training materials that school districts may use to help comply with the provisions of this section. These materials were required under the law to be developed in consultation with the Task Force on the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. This is a state task force that has been in existence since 2012. It is a group of committed experts, and it was, this document represents a collaborative effort among all partners who are committed to keeping our kids safe. So I think it's important everybody to hear or to see who was involved in the development of the guidance that's going out to every district in our state. As you can see, this group was co-chaired by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and Missouri Kids First. Missouri Kids First is a statewide organization. Our mission is to empower adults to protect children from abuse. We're the state chapter and state network of child advocacy centers. So when we brought this group together, when DESE and Missouri Kids First brought this group together, we wanted to have leaders in the field of organizations providing sexual abuse education already in schools to inform the standards and curriculum framework that we're recommending to school districts. We also thought it was important to have our school partners involved. So as you can see, this group, this education subcommittee, is a very multidisciplinary team of folks. So we have child advocacy centers throughout our state. We have all of the relevant state agencies, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Department of Health, Social Services. And then we also have our school partners. We have the School Board Association, school counselors, school social work, school psychologists. It was a great group of folks and a great number of thought leaders who put their information into this document. All right, so what is included in the materials? So this effort represents a year of collaborative work. So what we put in there, what the group decided, we put information about best practices in the field of sexual abuse prevention education. We did a full curriculum review of different programs that are available throughout the country, as well as programs that are currently being done all over the state. We took a look at some of the research on what we know are effective practices and programs. And we held a number of meetings, received stakeholder input. I can't say enough, we can't emphasize enough that we encourage our schools to take a look at this guidance and pull out those pieces that helped them adapt and customize to best meet the students in your communities. The materials went out and have gone out to all school districts, but there are different pieces within it that speak to the different partners. So there are parts specifically, that teachers should take a look at, community members, principal, school leadership, school counselors, as well as other partners that schools may work with. This document is very comprehensive. So this is the table of contents. I'm going to go through some of this. The purpose of this instructional webinar series, parts 2, 3, and 4 are really going to bring various parts of this document to life. So included in the document is, there are several examples of approaches to sexual abuse prevention organization based on evidence-informed prevention programs. We focused on 4 specific approaches to preventing child sexual abuse. We discuss the whole child approach, the socio-ecological approach, the trauma-informed approach, and culturally responsive approaches. The document itself goes through the evidence behind each of these approaches, provides an overview and tips on utilizing these approaches. I will say that part 2 and 3 both cover different pieces of this in their delivery, so they can provide some great tools. A large part of the document is designed to provide a curriculum framework of age-appropriate standards and performance indicators. I will make a note that though the law requires that the education be delivered in 6th grade and up, it was the wide opinion of both the members of this committee as well as from those stakeholders conversations that that standards be developed and programs be recommended for K through 12. We did a survey of what different schools had prioritized throughout the state, and we found that there were a number of districts, big and small across our state, that were already doing child sexual abuse prevention in elementary school, and we really felt that this document, we didn't want to have to redo it. We wanted to reflect what was already being done and maybe what research shows should be done. So we went ahead and developed curriculum framework and teaching considerations beginning in kindergarten. So part 2 goes through, of this webinar series, is going to go through the curriculum framework and teaching considerations in detail. But I think it's important for you to know what you're going to see is that we have a set of standards and performance indicators and curriculum broken out by grade clusters. So there's K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. A huge requirement of the law is that it be developmentally appropriate. And so what we did, we broke it up by age. The standards incorporate those that are most relevant from our health education standards, our Missouri school counseling standards, as well as the national sex education standards. So included, there are standards, there are performance indicators to meet those standards broken by age, as well as teaching considerations and practical tips on developing this content. A second major piece of the guidance and training materials is there is a robust appendices. We went through a very large, we did a landscape and to look at what was being done across the nation in Missouri and at our local school district level. And we worked to incorporate all of that information into this document. So, this document includes national, state, local programs and resources. We included programs that are for children all the way K through 12. And we included very detailed information about these programs. So everything from the different programs, the different parts of the standards that are met by each program, the age levels they're most appropriate for, the format, and how long they take, as well as cost, if there is one. We also included information for adults. It was very much felt by the stakeholders that were pulled together to develop this document that it was of huge importance to educate the adults in our schools on what child sexual abuse is, how to deliver this education in a trauma-informed way, and then what happens after this is delivered. There is a need for educating mandated reporters, and we put all of that information in here. We thought that this law pertains to education of children, but it also cannot be done in a silo. It cannot be done alone, and it must also include training for adults. And so we put information in this document that reflects that need. There is also an emphasis in this document on a comprehensive approach to child sexual abuse education. Here in Missouri, we are very fortunate to have a lot of different organizations and agencies with whom to collaborate and seek assistance in this important effort. And so we included in Appendix A a list of those organizations, state and local, where they serve, because we are encouraging all school districts to take a look through that and look at partners that they'd be interested in working at when they're planning and delivering this education. Because forging partnerships to build on existing collaborations, it's great opportunities to expand and maximize. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. So we encourage you to take a look, see what is most appropriate and what connections you already have at your school district. Try to leverage those partnerships and work together. So I want to provide you with a preview of what you can see throughout this instructional series. Part 2 of this series is going to take a deep dive into that curriculum framework. You're going to hear from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and other members of the subcommittee to talk about where those standards, how they were developed, and how they can be implemented in a way that meets the intent of this law and teaches our kids in an age appropriate way. Number 3 is part 3 of this series is going to be really taking a deep dive into what it means to deliver child sexual abuse education in a trauma-informed way. We will be having discussions with an organization that currently works and partners with school districts to provide this education in our schools. Some tips and tips around developing this delivering this education in a way that that helps, that takes into consideration that individuals, that kids that they're working with and delivering this education to may have already been victims of child sexual abuse, and how to handle that situation should a child come forward after the education is done and make a disclosure. So they're going to be touching on what it means to be trauma informed, what are your requirements under our mandated reporting laws in Missouri, and how to handle disclosures of abuse. And then the fourth in this series is we're going to bring on an organization and their school partners to kind of provide a case study and show how child sexual abuse education is already being done in school districts, just to provide a sample and to give you something to consider when you're working to implement it in your own district. So we look forward to you joining us. Thanks.